I had a very difficult first pregnancy. My kid, Janak, goes by they, them pronouns, was born at 1 pound, 14 ounces, 26 and a half weeks. I went through postpartum depression. I ended up going through a divorce, and I ended up with a wonderful man after that. There are people who take birth control religiously and still get pregnant, and so that's what happened to me. And my doctor said, you know, there is no guarantee that you're not going to have the same kind of birth. And so I decided to have an abortion. I realized how lucky I was. I also felt that shame that we should not feel, but that is what our culture has done, is made this a shameful act instead of a self-empowering preservation choice act.
And joining me now are Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington State, chair of the Progressive Caucus, and Congresswoman Karen Bass of California, who's also a candidate for mayor of Los Angeles. Congresswoman, thank you very much for coming back to the Sunday Show. Congresswoman Jayapal, let me start with you. There are folks on the right who cast the choice you and millions of similarly situated women made as one that was done cavalierly. But it wasn't, was it?
Jonathan, good morning and happy Mother's Day to you and to my colleague and to all the moms out there. No, it was not done cavalierly. It was a hard decision for me, probably the hardest I've had to make in my life. It's one I've replayed in my mind many times. And thank God, Jonathan, that I made that decision. Because if somebody else had made that decision for me, I don't know how I could have lived with whatever the decision was. And I think that's the important thing here. I don't think it has to be a tough choice, by the way. I think this is about choice, regardless of whether it's difficult or easy. For some women and pregnant people, it is about their being able to plot their lives, being able to plan when they want to have children, when they want to have a family. It's an economic security issue for many, many pregnant people across the country. But for me, it was extremely difficult, and it was so nuanced. And that's the reason I spoke about it when I did. I hadn't talked about it for 15 years, hadn't told my mom about it. It took me a lot of time to really get through those years. As you saw, I got emotional watching myself get emotional in that little clip, because it's a hard, nuanced, complex decision, and nobody has the information to be able to make it other than me, the person who's going to end up living with that choice.
Right, and that's the word that I keyed in on, nuanced. And so, Congresswoman, I'm focusing this on men. What don't men get about the decision you found yourself having to make?
Well, it just makes me enraged that men are the ones who are trying to make this decision for us. By the way, if we tried to legislate any kind of requirement on men around their private organs, their private choices, I think we would see a massive backlash and it wouldn't happen. Men don't understand that, and I'm not saying all men, because my partner certainly did. The men in my life understood this was my choice. But I think for those who are trying to tell us what we should do with our own bodies, they have to understand that this is not a choice they are going to live with. They are not the ones who carry the fetus for 9 months or for whatever time. They are not the ones who go through the trauma of having a child come out that perhaps has serious issues in the future. These are all things that, unfortunately, in today's society, women still are the primary caretakers, the primary decision makers. That said, this is incredibly popular with men and women and pregnant people across the country. 70% of people believe that a person should have the right to make choices about their own bodies, and that Roe v. Wade should remain legal. So it's not that abortion is going to go away, Jonathan. It is still going to happen, but it won't be safe and legal if this opinion is overturned. Right. And it will bear the disproportionate burden on folks of color, women, poor people who cannot travel, who cannot pay thousands of dollars to get this procedure done. And that is really what we're facing today.
Congresswoman Bass, you're a former physician assistant way back at the beginning of your career. From that experience, what is your biggest concern about an America without Roe v. Wade?
Well, I mean, basically the idea that men or anybody else would determine what goes on in a doctor's office. I mean, could you imagine if men had to have permission or it was outlawed to have vasectomies? I mean, the idea that any medical procedure is not left completely to the decision of the doctor and the patient just is crazy. But I'll tell you, one of the things that really worries me about this decision is just the rolling back of time to states' rights. And then to me, when the court is moving in that direction, that raises a ton of other issues that were in the federal system because of what was happening on the courts. And we see the right-wing takeover of many of these states. You can only imagine what other issues are going to come up. And the question will be, will the federal government, will the Supreme Court defend the rights of individuals, or will they say the states can decide anything?
And, you know, a lot of those, we were talking about some of those other issues that could be at stake as a result of that draft opinion, if that were to become official. But Congresswoman, a 2007 profile of Rick Caruso, your major opponent in the race for Los Angeles mayor, noted that he opposes abortion in most cases, but would support some stem cell research. In reaction to the leaked Alito opinion, Caruso tweeted that he is, quote, a father who is pro-choice. Should voters believe him?
Well, I mean, I think Mr. Caruso has been a lifelong Republican and recently became independent, and then a couple of weeks before he filed to run, became a Democrat. So I think you do look at someone's history, you look at their positions, and then you make a decision. Los Angeles is an overwhelmingly Democratic city, so what I see is him trying to align with the electorate, but it has been inconsistent with positions that he's taken in his life.
I'm going to get both of you to respond to this last question in 2 minutes that we have left. There is a vote in the Senate set for this week to codify the right to an abortion, but all predictions are that it will fail. Congresswoman Jayapal, you first. If we know it's going to fail, and I know it's not your chamber, it's the Senate, but if we know it's going to fail, why is it important to hold that vote?
Jonathan, it's very important to get every senator on the record about where they stand on this issue. You see Republicans trying to dodge and not talk about this issue because they know how incredibly popular it is. But also, Jonathan, if it fails on a straight vote to get 60 votes, which I assume it probably will, unfortunately, I would call on Senators Murkowski and Collins to endorse a carve-out to the filibuster so that we can pass it. These are two women who have said that they are pro-choice. They certainly have talked about understanding the gravity of the situation we're in, and I think it's incumbent on them now to take on these justices who frankly lied under oath about whether or not this question was settled law. And with those two senators, we could pass this with a carve-out to the filibuster with 51 votes.
And Congresswoman Bass, on that issue of the filibuster, you know, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said to USA Today that if Republicans retake the Senate, you know, they could be looking at a possible national ban on abortion. So is getting folks on the record now part of, like, not an insurance policy, but a way of sending a signal to the country of what could come?
Oh, well, absolutely. And I think it's very important that that vote is taken, that people clearly see how significant the midterm election is. What is at stake? This Supreme Court decision is clear, and I have no doubt that if the Republicans were to take over both houses, they would do exactly that. And thank goodness President Biden is there, because we know it would be vetoed.